Hi, it's Katrina. Number 10. The Malta Catacombs. In July of 2016, Mike Mansholt set out to explore the realm of the dead, and then he vanished. Mike was a tourist from Germany who wanted to see the famous catacombs of Rabat while he was visiting Malta. But Mike was never seen alive again. A week after he disappeared, his remains were discovered under extremely bizarre circumstances. All these years later, we still don't know exactly what happened to him. However, whatever caused his death is almost certainly hidden in the secretive tunnels underneath the island, created by a mysterious culture centuries ago. The catacombs of Rabat are truly incredible. Spread like a maze underneath Malta, it is a tunnel system connecting sanctuaries, prehistoric dwellings, and mysterious temples. The system was carved by human hands starting at least 2,000 years ago. Human remains have been found within the tunnels dating back to medieval times, the Roman period, and even earlier. People have loved this place since the dawn of time. Even stranger, archaeologists have discovered skeletons with elongated skulls, which means a certain group of people that once lived here practiced cranial deformation. Since this site is so ancient, there are plenty of mysteries surrounding the catacombs. Stories talk of giants, cyclops, and missing children. So what happened to Mike? 3 days after Mike was officially declared a missing person, an anonymous tip led the police to the Dingley Cliffs, the highest point in Malta. At 820 feet above sea level, the remains of Mike Mansholt were discovered. It wasn't pretty. He was missing organs, his camera, and his shoes. He appeared to have died from a fall, although he also may have been robbed and killed, poisoned, or he possibly died of dehydration. Authorities never gave any satisfying explanation. Many believe that Mike met his fate when he came across something sinister inside the catacombs, and that by exploring the realm of the dead, he sealed his own fate. Number 9. Fort Bull. In 1756, French soldiers attacked Fort Bull in Rome, New York, during the French and Indian War, which saw the North American colonies of the British Empire fighting against the forces of France. They cut off the supply lines to Fort Oswego and then ambushed the fortress in the night. The French joined forces with native Haudenosaunee warriors and charged the gate. They broke inside and killed every last person they saw. They then lit one of the powder magazines on fire, causing roughly 600 pounds of pure gunpowder to explode. Brian Grills, battlefield archaeologist, says about 60 people defending the fortress were killed in the explosion. The mysterious thing about Fort Bull is that no one knows where it is. Archaeologists have been trying to find it for decades. We know that the British built a new garrison called Fort Wood Creek in the same area after Fort Bull was destroyed, but researchers can't find its ruins. The reason the attack happened at all was that Fort Bull was a strategic military location. It was located between Albany and Fort Oswego, and it guarded the waterway connecting Albany, New York, to Lake Ontario. What they did recently discover were some battlefield remnants. They found French musket balls and shell fragments from grenades that may have been used in the attack on Fort Bull. But for all their research, scientists still haven't found the ruins of the fabled fort that was burned to the ground by the French. Number 8. Mystery Palace. A mysterious and magnificent palace was recently discovered by Israeli archaeologists. About 2 miles south from Jerusalem's Old City, researchers came across carved stone structures and forgotten relics. Some of the artifacts appear to have been neatly buried, though nobody is really sure why. The palace was built a very long time ago, around the 8th century BC. That puts it in the biblical era when Jerusalem was a Jewish kingdom, what historians call the First Temple period. Based on the fragments discovered, the building was once extraordinarily grand. It had tall, ornately decorated columns and lavish window frames, and was likely occupied by one of the top members of Jewish society. It may have been a king of Judah or a wealthy nobleman. According to the Israeli Antiquities Authority, whoever lived in the structure had a breathtaking view of the entire city. It would have been one of the nicest houses in all of Jerusalem. The palace met a devastating end in the year 586 BC. That was when the Babylonians conquered Jerusalem, just like it says in the Bible. King Nebuchadnezzar II, king of the Neo-Babylonian Empire, laid siege to Jerusalem for 30 months. Then the Babylonians destroyed the city building by building. finally burning down the first temple. The kingdom of Judah was destroyed, and many of its citizens were taken to Babylon as slaves. Whoever it was that enjoyed a life of prosperity in this great palace was likely dead or captive by the time the siege was finished. Number 7. Lost City of Alexander the Great. An ancient city that may have been founded by Alexander the Great himself was recently discovered in Iraq. It had been hiding under mountains of sand for over 2,000 years. But recently, thanks to new technology, archaeologists were able to use drones to fly over huge patches of the Iraqi countryside looking for ruins. John McInnes from the British Museum said he and his team were able to spot the foundations of several large buildings, including what appears to be a stone press that may have been used in wine production. As of right now, nothing is confirmed, and we have no real name for the city. However, researchers do believe it was built in 331 BC, while Alexander the Great pursued the Persian leader Darius III following the Battle of Gaugamela. During this time, as Alexander conquered region after region, he took over or started new towns that he named after himself. After Persia was defeated, this city became a kind of meeting place between East and West. Excavations have revealed ancient Greek statues, old coins, roof tiles, and other items that will hopefully reveal this city's identity. And now for number 6. But first, I wanted to give a big shout out to Lil M and John Smathers. Thanks so much for watching and supporting Origins Explained. If you are new here, be sure to hit that subscribe button for more videos like these. Number 6. The Tennessee Tent Graves. The Tennessee tent graves are a strange thing to see for anyone who doesn't live in the American South. These graves can be found all throughout historical graveyards in Tennessee's Cumberland Plateau. They can also be found in parts of Kentucky, Arkansas, and Alabama. They are called tent graves because rather than a smooth stone slab placed over top of a grave, there were 2 slabs laid against one another to form a triangle, like the top of a tent. But why did Tennessee, of all places, resort to this bizarre way of burying their dead? It started in the 1800s. Slabs of stone would be placed over grave sites because the ground was considered unstable. People were buried in wooden coffins, but then those coffins would decay, and the grave would sink because the soil was too soft. This created a major issue because people walking through graveyards kept falling into pits and getting tangled up with skeletons. It was also unfortunate because it made life a lot easier for grave robbers who so readily pillaged the dead. And so, for decades, the people of Tennessee buried their deceased loved ones in tent graves. And while such a thing hasn't been practiced in decades, the mysterious graves can still be found in rural cemeteries across the state. Number 5. Yashima Castle. These days, Yashima Castle is in such a poor state that it hardly even looks like a castle anymore. There are no more walls, and the only things remaining of the original structure are its foundation and a piece of its main gate. When it was built in 667 AD by the Yamato dynasty, Yashima Castle was an impenetrable mountain fortress. The castle was built on a mesa to take full advantage of the terrain, with its walls spanning about 3 miles. The Japanese integrated the walls of the castle with the natural walls of the mountain to make it even stronger. Over 1,300 years ago, this place looked like something out of a fairy tale, with tall walls, imposing stone gateways, and vantage points looking down into the lands below. The whole point of the castle in its prime was to defend Japan against invasion. It was built specifically on the coast of the Seto Inland Sea to defend against the Chinese Tang and the Silla Kingdom of Korea. Number 4. The Royal Tombs of Ur. Between 1922 and 1934, archaeologists excavated the ancient Sumerian city of Ur, located in modern Iraq. Ur was a legendary place, one of the greatest cities of Mesopotamia at the dawn of civilization. Ur was built during the Ubaid period in 3800 BC, almost 6,000 years ago, and it continued to grow and prosper until 500 BC when it was abandoned. The city was part of the development of human civilization for 3,300 years, an unbelievable span of time, and something beyond the scope of what most people can even imagine. They worshipped the Akkadian moon god Nana and built the majestic ziggurat of Ur, arguably the first true wonder of the world. During excavations in the 1920s, excavators found a deep shaft which led to the royal tombs of Ur. In the following years, researchers unveiled 16 royal burials. They found sunken stone chambers with vaulted roofs similar to the tombs in ancient Egypt. Unfortunately, many of them had already been pillaged by grave robbers. Even still, there were a lot of relics to be found. Everything from golden daggers to statues of gold, and musical instruments decorated with golden bullheads. There was so much treasure even the looters never managed to carry it all away. But beyond the treasure was something horrifying. Archaeologists identified the graves of multiple high-status individuals who had likely been kings and queens. Evidence of elaborate funerary rituals involving human sacrifice was found alongside these graves on an unprecedented scale. Within their graves were the death pits, holes in the ground filled with men and women who had been slaughtered and then tossed inside as sacrifice. Researchers believe the victims were killed to be companions for their king or queen in the afterlife, forced to be slaves to their masters, even in death. Number 3. Old Pitsligo Church. The Old Pitsligo Church was built in Scotland around the year 1630. It can be found in Fraserburgh, and it has most certainly seen better days. The church is missing its roof, its walls look like they're about to fall down, and the gravestones are stained with years of bird excrement. It looks like any one of the hundreds of old churches gradually falling into disrepair across the UK. But the Old Pitsligo Church has one mysterious feature not all churches do. It has a burial vault. The south aisle of the church served as a family burial vault for the Forbes of Pitsligo from between 1636 to 1781. The Forbes' personal family castle, known as Pitsligo Castle, stands just a little north of the old church on the outskirts of Rosehardy. You can see the old family crest over the western doorway of the church, and outside the church you can find over 100 tombstones. They date as far back as 1643, with some of the earliest table stone memorials being carved with gruesome symbols of mortality, like an hourglass. One of the biggest gravestones on the property belongs to a man named Alexander Swan, who died in 1678. It's decorated with a ghoulish carving of a skull and crossbones. Number 2. Shanoff Castle. Historical records show the lords of Ramosk appearing around the 12th century AD in Switzerland. In that same century, they built the oldest part of the Shanoff Castle, a tower looking out at the grand snowy peaks of the Swiss mountains and down into the forested valleys below. In the 13th century, the lords of Ramosk added to the small tower, improving upon the fortification and building a real-life storybook castle in the mountains. Although for them, it wasn't a fairy tale castle. It was an important fortification which allowed their family to control trade and taxes in the region. Having such a great fortress allowed them to control all the peasants within their grasp and steal their money through the tax system. Unfortunately for the Ramosk family, a family dispute ruined their legacy. A disagreement between the two eldest brothers ended with one of them being murdered and the other fleeing the castle. The castle was then handed over to the Match family in 1369. In 1780, the castle was mostly destroyed. Fortifications built in the mountains generally have a short lifespan due to Mother Nature being unruly. It was a landslide that brought the castle to ruins and forced local lords to abandon the property. Number 1. Lost Persian Military Base. 2,500 years ago, Persian king Cambyses II attacked Egypt. It was at the height of the Achaemenid Empire, and Egypt was in serious trouble as the Persians flowed across the Nile and invaded. All these years later, archaeologists believe they have discovered a campsite that was used by the Persians during their invasion of Egypt. It was uncovered in northern Israel and was likely a Persian military base. The structure would have been bustling with soldiers preparing for war. The mighty Achaemenid Empire, or the Persian Empire, was founded by Cyrus the Great around the year 580 BC. He conquered the Medians, the Lydians, and the Neo-Babylonians and expanded his territory. His son, Cambyses II, wanted to continue expanding the empire and destroying enemies, so he gathered a great army and brought them into Palestine. This was where he began to assemble one of the greatest armies the world had ever seen. One of the places they gathered in preparation was this newly discovered military camp. Then, around 520 BC, Cambyses directed his forces down into Egypt. The camp would have remained functional as a kind of depot during the war. The immense army required a huge amount of resources, and so there were supply points all the way from Egypt into Persia, and this was one of them. Thanks for watching! Which of these mysterious ancient places would you love to visit? Let me know in the comments below, and be sure to hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you next time. Bye!